Hello and welcome to episode 67 of the Adventures of the Bane Glorious. We have everybody here. We have Ed.
Oh.
We have Jess.
Hello.
We have Simon.
Oh, hello. I didn't see you then.
And we have Kathryn.
Hello.
Right, last time you were on the outskirts of Duskleaf when you saw a ghost. You decided to investigate and found, after a little bit of deliberation and splitting up to find certain things, that you had found the ghost of Thelios's mother. She had been stabbed by a sword that was on the mantelpiece some time before. You explained to her who you were and why you were there, while Lor'athel went upstairs to follow some candlelight and found an old man who seemed quite ill in a cot at the top of the 2 flights of stairs. You discovered that there seems to be a strange relationship between the presence of the ghost, the sword, and the ill gentleman upstairs. Lor'athel discovered that this person was probably Thelios's father, and on coming back down, you had conversations with the mother. She suggested that you should bring her peace by killing the father, which you were very recalcitrant to do. You all tromped back upstairs, had a few discussions with the father, eventually revealed the fact that the ghost was in the room and handed the sword to him to prove it. Erallur then managed to persuade him by her argument and by showing that the ghost was there to apologise to the ghost, which then led to the ghost disappearing and apparently the illness breaking in some way. You then went back out of the house and the next morning cast plane shift again, and much to the annoyance of most of the players, didn't end up in a different plane. You found yourselves You found yourselves on the outside of your pub, which looked like it had been refurbished to quite a grand degree, and then waited around for another day or so whilst the plane shift recharged. Plane shifted back into the material plane, and Erallur had some conversations with Hawkins about the pub and about recent events, and waited for Dawkins and Hawkins to return. Lor'athel decided that he would do a little bit of woodworking to put the torn pendant behind the bar in the pub. Flint went off to buy a boat. Juniper just happily sat around watching things occur. And Flint then sailed his boat back to the outside of the pub, was confronted with a dock warden who wanted to see his permit, and with a little bit of trial and tribulation managed to provide a minor illusioned version. Then you all went to the end of the pier outside the pub and threw the remaining sword hilt from the sword that was from Thelios's house into the harbour. It is still fairly early on in the day, I'd say around 10 o'clock by this point. It's just coming up to the end of Tarsak and the beginning of Myrtle, which means that the Festival of Greengrass is imminent. What would you like to do?
So did you say it was 10 a.m.?
Yeah, thereabouts. And if you're wanting to do the grand opening of the pub around Greengrass, then there's obviously a few preparations that you might want to do. You might want to go about getting the name sorted and decorations and things like that.
Yes. I think the first thing that I do is check that... Wait, is this the following day from when I had the conversation with Hawkins and Dawkins? Or was that the morning?
No, you've had that this morning.
That was this morning. Okay,
Yeah.
I won't do that then. At some point, I'd like to check that Dawkins is okay, but probably not right now.
It's been
5 minutes. Yeah.
But yeah, I think, generally getting some decorations. I'd like to sort out a menu of drinks and food. And I don't know if they may have done that already, but certainly I'd like to name one of the drinks.
Okay.
Other than that, yeah. Does anyone else want any input on the party?
Entertainment, obviously.
Well, I thought I'd hire someone else. That would be so bad, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be so bad?
Juniper leaves. She never comes back. You've broken her little heart.
We could hire band members to work for you.
I mean, she'd probably be fine with that.
And we could call them Juniper and the something.
The hired band members.
Can we find a band of tabaxis and it will be Juniper and the Pussycats?
I mean, can we, Michael?
It's possible.
Yeah.
Certainly possible. There are some tabaxi around. You don't know where they come from necessarily, but you've seen them around
Could
in
we go to,
places.
is there like a guild of music guild? Guild of musicians?
There's not really a guild of musicians. There are a few different guilds within Waterdeep, and obviously there's the various factions that partake in the city, but not necessarily a prominent music guild. Is there anything any of the rest of you would like to do with the pub?
I mean, if we're bringing in new ales,
Yes, I'd like your advice.
I'm happy to test those.
Yeah. Let's go for ale tasting.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that.
Does anyone
Yeah.
want to come ale tasting?
Juniper will happily go ale testing.
Lor'athel will also go ale tasting.
Okay,
It's
so
like
Well,
before a
it's,
wedding. It's like the cake tasting.
yeah.
But with alcohol.
So Dawkins and Hawkins secured a supply of fairly simple ale, just as an opening night kind of thing. But in order to find and taste more ales, you probably have to go to the trades ward for that.
Cool. I think
So
what would be nice is if we could just, and feel free to chip in, but we could almost create a bespoke ale that's like, maybe not just us that sell it, but something that's, we could maybe name it and be like, this is our special. That's what I'm trying to say.
Nice craft
Our
ale.
special. Yeah.
you could definitely do that, but it would take longer
Okay.
because the ale company would have to brew it. They'd have to get certain ingredients. You'd have to suggest certain ingredients.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be ready for opening night, unfortunately. That would probably be
Okay.
a
We do it
longer
anyway, then.
process.
I'm
Yeah,
happy to do it anyway.
Yeah.
and
I think we
it
should.
would, I imagine, require a few taste tests from you and then wider groups and all that sort of stuff. So maybe because of how long the brewing process takes, probably looking at about 3 months.
Yeah.
So
Just
yeah,
realised with a beard and top knot, Flint has finally found his calling as a pretentious bar owner.
Yeah, craft ale guy.
Yay!
Do you have tattoos and piercings?
I do. Yeah.
Have you got like an undercut?
Yeah, I've got no hair around the back and sides, and
Amazing.
yeah, or not.
hipster dwarfs.
Yeah.
So I would say, Erallur, roll an investigation check with advantage because the others are helping you look for ales and beers and things.
Oh, advantage, yes. Exactly the same. 12. That keeps happening. It happened the other day. I kept rolling literally the same thing.
Did you roll the same dice?
Yeah.
See, there's obviously the discussion of should you roll 2 different dice or should you roll the same one?
Well, we'll keep it for now, but I'll
Yeah.
get another set out.
Yeah. Okay. So it takes you a little while. You see a few places that might trade in what you're looking for, but they look like stalls rather than more established places. You eventually come to a more substantial building that seems to have a few carts going to and fro with lots of barrels on the outside, some of which is ale, some of which is spirits and cocktail ingredients and things like that. So there's barrels of farm produce and there's hops going backwards and forwards. Looks like that probably would be your better bet. And
Do we have sorry,
No, not a
is-
problem.
is there a company that Hawkins and Dawkins have used to source the ale that they're currently using? Like, do we already have a
They-
relationship with any
They
companies?
didn't mention it and you didn't look at the barrel, so you're not
Okay.
really sure.
Okay.
They probably do, but you don't know what the company would be called.
I feel like it would be useful to find that out, and then, because if we're going to create a special new ale, it would be good if it was coming from the same place, right?
Yeah,
I'm just
probably.
thinking business wise, so I might take the time to go and find that out.
Okay. So you see that there is a name printed onto the barrel that Dawkins brought back, which is Hopperwell.
Okay, and then can they tell me where they're based?
Well, Hawkins would probably know that. Dawkins and Hawkins are still absent.
Yeah.
But Hawkins says that they would be in the trades ward. They're just a
Okay.
little bit closer to the wall of the city than most of the other businesses because they prefer to be that end so that their supplies are there a little bit quicker through the gates.
Okay, right. So I guess we'll head back with this new knowledge.
Okay, so you go to the Hopperwell Brewery then?
Yeah.
Okay, so as you approach, you see that there are a few carts here, but it seems like they're not moving as much. It looks like they're unloading the supplies and they seem like they've got their supplies for the day. And you can see that there's a number of halflings moving things around. There's a couple of dwarves who are helping with the heavier barrels and heavier containers. And you can also see what appears to be a Goliath who is also helping, but in the sense that when the smaller folk seem to be struggling, she just comes in and picks up the barrel from them, sometimes with them still attached, and doesn't seem to hear their protestations when she does this. But you just catch as she walks away a little bit of a smirk on her face. The underneath of this building is fairly hollowed out in the sense that the carts seem to be able to go in undercover, and then they unload them onto a platform that then they take through some doors. And there's a set of stairs that are laid out in a cut back, almost rectangle, that go up to the second floor. And you can see a few more official looking people, halflings and gnomes, going over abakai and boards with various sigils on them. They seem to be counting the supplies that have come in. And as you approach, they lean over the banister to look down at you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We're here to inquire about potentially a new... We already work together, but we want to create a new ale.
We do?
Yes. You supplied the ale for... What's it currently called? I don't know if it has a name at the moment.
It doesn't.
The tavern by the docks, which has recently been taken over, run by an orc and a dwarf and a halfling.
They all look amongst themselves and you just hear these babbling. Oh yes, the one that came by this morning.
Quite possibly, yes.
Yes. So, what are you wanting?
We were wondering if it would be possible to craft our own ale.
Oh. This would be acceptable. And their eyes go a little bit scarily wide, particularly the gnomes.
Are we able to do that now?
We can discuss it. Please, come up. So you go upstairs and the gnome who was speaking to you leads you through a door that leads you into a chamber with a long table. But all of the seats are set to gnomish or at most dwarvish height. So Juniper and Flint, you're fine. The others of you might need to sit down with your knees around your chest.
Yeah.
To avoid overbalancing or having a slightly uncomfortable position.
If I just kneel on the floor, would I be at the right height?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just do that.
Okay. So the gnome who led you in, they have quite sandy hair tied back into a quite short ponytail. He is wearing fairly practical clothes. They look like a tanned leather waistcoat and then homespun shirt, a little bit stained. You can see that there's a few what look like beer stains on there, and leather trousers that finish in quite nice boots. They walk to the head of the table, and a few of the other officials, some of whom look quite similar to him, so may well be family members, walk in after you. They almost push you in quite eagerly. One of the dwarves comes in after you and stands by the door, but the majority of the people in the room are gnomes. And as you all take your various seats, you are allowed to take whichever seat you want. It doesn't look like the rest of the gnomes are bothered about where they sit. And as you sit down, the head gnome says, right, well, introductions are in order. My name is Philus. Who are you?
I'm Erallur.
Erallur, good to meet you.
I'm Flint.
Flint, good to meet you.
I'm
You always
Juniper,
say it
and
with
this
it.
is my loot.
Juniper, Lute, good to meet you both.
And I'm Lor'athel.
Lor'athel, a pleasure. So, a new ale.
Yes.
What are we thinking?
I would like something quite light, but...
I see. And suddenly a notepad appears in his hand, and it looks like it's fairly thick, almost papyrus-like paper. And you're not really sure who gave it to him, but he starts scribbling frantically. way more notes than you have said words.
He's just going sense.
Yeah.
I've worked with artists like that before.
Yeah.
Well, maybe we could try some and see what everyone's thinking.
You see what your tastes are and see what kind of thing we do. Yes. Well, the Hopperwells, we are open to that. Yes. So you would prefer a light ale? Would anyone poo-poo that, or prefer a darker? We could mix them together. We could see. Experimentation is in our nature.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
If it's
Good. Yes.
meant to represent us and what we stand for, have you got anything that's maybe a bit more mead-like?
Oh, a mead rather than ale. We do
Is mead
different
like more
drinks.
winey?
A little bit, yeah. It's still frothy,
Yeah.
but it's less. Alcohol's not my expertise, but I'm trying to think of the word and I can't think of it.
Like it's like a sweet wine, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, I don't really mind. It can be whatever.
I mean, you could have more than one.
Yeah. No, I'm happy with a mead.
Yeah.
Could we brew an ale with honey?
Oh, interesting. Usually you would have a honey mead or just ale. We could certainly try. Make it quite sweet.
Sweet is good.
Add honey to a lot of stuff back at home. That sounds good.
Ah, wonderful. I'm excited. Come. And immediately hops up. There's barely a change in the height from where they were sitting and their standing height, but then just goes quite eagerly through into the next chamber. And before the rest of you can even follow, the door slams shut. They don't hold it open for you. They seem very excited by this prospect. And the dwarf walks over to the door before all of you have stood up and just looks at you apologetically through very thick eyebrows that curl up onto their forehead and holds the door open and nods through. Do you go through the door?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. As you go through the door, you find yourselves on another balcony that this time is above a much larger room where the scent of grain and hops and alcohol immediately swell in your nostrils. Juniper, it is an interesting smell, not one that you're particularly fond of, given your lack of propensity for hard drinking.
I don't know. I think she's done some hard drinking.
She has, but she has had some rather unpleasant hangovers as a result.
Yeah, she's so tiny.
Exactly. The other people that were in the room follow you out, but you can see that Phyllis is already on the lower floor chatting to a few of the workers down there who are a bit more of a mix in terms of races. There's a few humans, you can see a couple of elves, and the Goliath from outside has also come in. But they all seem similarly excited. A few gnomes head off with the Goliath to get a few more barrels. You can see that there are a number of workbenches. There's a few rather heavy-looking pieces of machinery, essentially, that seem to be quite advanced millstones. So they would grind up the grain as it comes through along fairly primitive conveyor belts. You also see a panoply of barrels, just so many, that are different woods, marked differently with date stamps and identifying numbers and letters. You can see that they seem to be kept in different areas, some of which are exposed to the sun at different times of the day. There's a few portions of the ceiling of this room that you can see can be opened a little bit more, as well as portions that are holding glass, which again would be fairly expensive for a company of this size. And as you are gestured down the staircase into this room proper, onto the slightly sawdusted flagstones below, a few barrels are brought over to you, and you are brought, again, some stools, this time appropriate sizes, by various people who then plonk the barrels down in front of you, and you can see that Phyllis is given a stop tap that he then jams into one of the barrels with surprising strength, and then starts to turn and pours a few samples. All of them are about a dram, and this one seems to be quite a light ale that's got a little bit of a flowery scent to it. Juniper, can you make a perception check with advantage for me?
I certainly can. With my totally real dice. Okay, one of those was 2, so I'm glad I had. Although even with that was still a bit of an 11 because my perception is crazy. But instead, it's a 22.
Okay.
Ooh.
You think that you identify
Indeed. What?
the slightly interesting smell of rosemary in there,
Oh.
which is unusual for an ale, but given the sweetness and floweriness that you were maybe suggesting with the honey, might be a bit of experimentation on their part. So you are provided with small glasses and the samples.
I'm going to smell it first, presumably get a similar but not quite as nuanced sense. I'm just like, there's something in it, but I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And then, I'll just taste it carefully.
Yeah. So as you all go to taste it, you can see Phyllis is looking at you, massive eyes unblinking, quite eager, fingers linked under the chin. And as you all taste it, it's unusual. You're not sure whether you like it, particularly Flint.
Mm.
I like it a bit more smoky.
Yeah. And given that it's not what you're used to, it's one of those things that you're thinking, it's probably an acquired taste rather than what you're after.
I'm going to just say, I like the floral notes.
Good,
but I'm not
good.
sure it's exactly what we're after. I think we need more of a middle ground here.
I think that thing to bear in mind is that we are situated along the docks, so we're probably going to have a lot of hearty sailors coming in but we're probably going to have quite a few sailors coming in, probably wanting quite a hearty drink after voyages at sea or before going out. So
But remember, we do have hearty drinks already.
But we want to be a place where sailors are going to come and be like, that's where that is.
Yes, so I suppose what I was thinking is we could have something that Thelios would have liked.
They can get hearty drinks anywhere, and we'll have those as well, but we want something that's a signature of ourselves, not of sailors.
Well, it's certainly both possible. Would cost more, but we could, as I said, do more than one. You know, we are happy to establish partnerships. Very happy indeed. But, obviously the supply and demand and contracts and such, obviously if you're commissioning us to make more than one drink, then it'll obviously cost you a little bit more.
I think it would be clearer for our brand if we just had one.
I'd agree with that.
Could we have something that has a lighter flavour but a heavy kick?
So you want a sweet foretaste and a mule kick aftertaste, yes?
Does that tick that box?
No, that works.
I'm sure there's lots of sailors who like a nice sweet flavour.
Yes,
What
but
we're heading
perhaps,
towards is
perhaps they won't admit it.
Exactly.
But then, if they do want more, they can drink more, and the people who don't.
Give anything a hard-sounding name and they'll drink it.
Well, we like to workshop names here. We don't like to dictate. Obviously, you're helping us create, but we want brand identity and such to be your own. We have a few partnerships with other taverns around the place, but obviously, this drink will just be yours.
That sounds very good.
I like what we have so far. Is it possible we can build upon this?
So you want the flowery, but maybe also honey?
Honey instead of flowery, maybe? Just so there's a sweet thing, but it's not over the top. I'm happy with just honey.
We've got the wilderness and the forest in there, but is there... Flint, are you thinking something more campfire in the wilderness than meadow in the wilderness?
I guess so.
Maybe a smoky honey kind of thing.
We could put some wood in it.
Oh, yes, that's smoky honey.
Well, but
It could be oak fired or something. I don't know.
Well, but we could brew it in a barrel made of burnt wood.
Valid one.
That would give a little bit of a charcoaly. Depending on the wood, it would also infuse it with that particular quality.
That'd be nice.
Again, may take a little longer, but
I think that's
and
fine.
obviously, if you're wanting this to be ready sooner rather than later, so that people get the flavor of your establishment, and then depending on how long our happy engagement together progresses, then perhaps we could have a 10-year celebration. And I'm thinking of the future, of course, but one likes to plan ahead, and perhaps we could have some rather lucrative vintages at certain points, and you know.
I think it would be good to be able to tell our customers that it will get better with age, and they can keep coming back.
Exactly. And then, you know, obviously everybody likes a good auction from time to time. And if we had, you know, a 5-year vintage or a 10-year vintage and all that sort of stuff.
Whoa.
You know, sorry.
We're just here for the one at the moment, so let's not get too excited.
I'm sorry. I get carried away.
Okay, so we're smoky honey, heavy kick kind of alcohol. Yeah, that's pretty good.
Aye, that suits me.
I don't think we need to overcomplicate it any more than that.
Feasible. All right. So, as a deposit, I will require honey this time of year. 50 gold.
Altogether? Or?
Yes, just as a deposit to create the new flavour.
That sounds
And then
fine.
you come back, taste it, and we can move on from there. And then if you're happy, then in order to secure the license and, you know, all the brewing capacity and the ingredients and such, we'll probably need maybe 100 gold for the first 6 months on top of that 50. And then we can perhaps renegotiate depending on how well the sales go.
You already know Hawkins and Dawkins, who were here earlier.
I do, pleasant gentlemen, yes.
I'm sure you'll be dealing with them in the longer term. So
wonderful. I look forward to it.
They can deal with that.
So do you need
I'll pay you the
50 from us now?
Yes, please.
So 12 gold, 5 silver.
Okay. Maths. Can't do it. What's 13 minus 5?
8.
Okay. Good.
Okay, so as you hand over the gold, the gnome clicks the fingers and another gnome comes up carrying a few containers that they slip the various denominations of coins into and then disappears. Then the gnome snaps the fingers again and a contract appears already written up, which stipulates the deposit, stipulates the amount expected on the provision of this new flavour, and has a few dotted lines, actually 4, surprisingly. It seems like they have a number of contracts pre-written and then can just fill in a few bits, as you can see that a couple of bits of the contract are wetter than the rest.
Cool. I will read it over to check. I mean, you don't have to actually tell me what it says, but
yeah, it seems pretty good.
Well,
Seems like there's no small print. It seems like exactly what he presented to you.
Cool. Yeah, I'll sign it first.
Okay. The rest of you signing or not?
Yeah.
It's just me now.
So you've sorted that out in terms of getting more drinks for your evening, because this won't be ready in time. I would say you would probably have to negotiate for that, but it would probably likely be another 50 gold to secure a few more flavours and things just for the opening night.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just going to pay for that because I can't bother to do the maths.
Okay.
There you
That's
go.
fair.
Done.
Okay, so you've got a few different spirits, you've got a few different ales, so they can supply those, and they say that they're happy to send them along.
Lovely.
As they do. So, is there anything else that anybody wants to do before opening night?
Nothing that we need to actually do. Acquire food.
Yeah, like decorations and stuff. Oh,
Right.
I need to get a sign.
Yes.
Oh, we need to name the.
So, well, I had a thought of a name, but I don't want to just decide it without if anyone else had any thoughts. So I'm happy to.
With a day's shopping accomplished, shall we convene back at the pub?
Yeah. Right. So yeah, we'll head back to the pub.
Okay. So when you head back to the pub, you find all 3 of your servants are present. They are working on a few bits and bobs, but largely it looks like the place is in quite good order from before. There's just a few more chairs that have been added in. It looks like Hawkins has been working on those all day. And it's a very open space, the lower floor. Looks a little bit sparse in terms of decoration, as in most things is bare wood. There's not really a lot of fabric. Mainly it looks like Hawkins was just doing the bare necessities and then leaving the slightly more fiddly or taste-based things to you folk. So it's a bit bare bones, and maybe it might have to be for opening night, and then you add things as the time progresses. But it's functional.
I mean, it's mostly going to be sailors, isn't it? I don't think they care that much.
Plus, they might be quite rowdy. So, you know,
we don't want them to destroy all our new.
Yeah, if you get expensive velvets and fabrics and cushions and things.
Certainly got that dockside warehouse feel to it at the moment, don't you think?
Yeah, no, I quite like it.
I reckon a gambling table over there, maybe a few more stools at the bar.
This is why you didn't want the guard to come in.
I'm
Let's make a speakeasy.
all about above boards all the way, I assure you.
Is gambling allowed?
Roll a history check.
Not bad. Well, that's a 21.
It is allowed, but you would probably need a license of some kind for it.
Okay.
Because similar to the regulation of the dock, similar to regulation of trade and tariffs and all that sort of stuff, people like the Lords of Waterdeep will want to, A, make sure that it is safe for their population, B, probably take a little bit of a cut of it.
Lor'athel, I think that should be your job.
I can do that tomorrow.
Should we also maybe get a dock? What was it called? The thing that you...
A permit.
Yeah, that's it. Do you want to get a permit?
I can ask about it when I'm there. Oh, that's going to be a fun day tomorrow.
Yeah.
When I read
You got the fun jobs.
Lor'athel struggles with the
Episode 67, Lor'athel at the DMV.
Yeah.
Dungeons and admin.
Yay.
So,
Okay.
Flint, speaking of this boat, it's very nice, but I'm wondering, if, as it's parked at the pub, is it pub property? Is it party boat?
Well, I'll need to get a proper permit for it at some point. But
Well, that's what Lor'athel's doing tomorrow.
oh, sorry, I thought that was just for the gambling and
The boat.
and the boat. Sorry. Well, actually, that's for me. There was once we've opened up the pub, I was thinking of sailing for a bit. I've missed the sea, and I think after everything that's happened, I need to get away for a bit. Not forever, just go out into open waters for a bit. And
Well, it's a bit of a cramped boat for all of us.
I think he means he wants to go on his own.
Oh,
just for a bit, everything with the wilderness and my family, just yeah, I think I need some time to reconnect.
But you'll come
Oh,
back.
Juniper, of course I'm going to come back. I need to teach you how to sail.
You did promise.
I did promise. Right.
You can't break a promise. That's illegal.
I need a permit.
he's got you there.
You. There's a lot of
It's going to
paperwork.
be illegal anywhere. It will be here in Waterdeep.
Absolutely. No, I like I say, I'm not planning on being gone forever, but I think, be it for a couple of 10-day or even a month or so, I think I just need to go out into the water and, right. But I'll be back. I'll be back.
Well, if you come back with another coat on your tail, I will kill you.
Well, I'm still yet to discover that fifth element, but I'll be fine. I'll be all right. Anyway, you mentioned something about a sign.
Well, we need to name this place. So I get out my notebook, which has this is just real. 20 names that have been crossed out for various reasons. And in brackets, it'll be like too obvious, too tacky, and reasons that I've crossed it out. In fact, would you like to know some of the ones that didn't make the cut?
Yes.
Yes, please.
Oh, hang on, I have to close the
100%.
document. Unfortunately, it's not physical. The worst one, because I realised it sounded like you were dead, Jess, is Juniper's Rest.
It does.
So I crossed that out.
Yeah.
But at first, I was like, this is great.
But you know that Juniper isn't dead because
Yeah.
Stelios' divine sense, he used it in her presence and didn't identify any
That's
undead,
true.
so you know she's
It's
not.
true.
But even if she was undead, I don't think she'd be very restful. So.
True.
Yeah.
The boar, but I didn't really like him that much.
Yeah. It's just a cool name.
It
Isn't
just sounds like a pub.
Yeah.
Already. What else? Something to do with the north.
Like that's the name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like it.
The potted plant.
Might bring back unpleasant memories for
Yeah.
Flint.
The Magister's Cuirass, because it sounds like a tavern. Yeah, they were the best ones. That's about it, really. A lot of it is just truffles, something. But yes, I narrowed it down to 2. The first is Stelios' Rest. But to be honest, I don't know if I want to feel sad every time I come home. But, I'm putting it out there as an option. And then the other option is the Hourglass and Pendulum.
Oh, it's cycle?
Does anyone want to add anything to the list?
I think the second one's good enough.
Yeah.
We named it after Felios. He'd only be glaring at us for the amount we were drinking.
Well, that's why I thought we could maybe make a drink in his honor.
Then he truly does become Jesus.
Oh my goodness.
It's my blood.
Yeah.
Well, it's just
Some
water
bread as well.
food colouring.
Orkins pipes up and says, I don't think anybody would drink it if they thought it was somebody's blood.
No,
Hello.
that would be weird, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
We'd get some weird people in.
I
We
mean,
started advertising.
that's probably going to happen anyway.
Yeah. I thought we could call the drink Mabel Shine, like moonshine.
That's quite
Oh, I
sure.
like that.
I like that.
It was the name of Thanios' horse that he lost many, many moons ago.
It wasn't even his horse.
Was it not?
No, he was getting it back for somebody.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like Mabel Shine.
I like Mabel Shane.
The Mabel Shine Craft Ale at the Hourglass and Pendulum.
Hey, that's nice.
Yeah, people seem happy with that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Sure.
so for expediency's sake, we'll say that you can fairly easily find a tavern sign maker. And are you wanting a logo or are you just wanting
Yeah.
the name?
Can we have an Hourglass and I don't know, I'm leaving it up to your
Well,
imagination.
Yeah, so they suggest this is obviously a bit of a busman's holiday for you, Kathryn, because you're basically going to a medieval graphic designer.
I thought about this, yeah.
So what the immediate thing that jumps to my mind is an hourglass with a pendulum within it.
I like that.
Probably with the chain hanging all the way through and then the pendulum in the bottom half.
Yeah, I like
Would
that.
that work?
Mm.
And just to make it slightly obvious that it's a pendulum, it's swung to one side.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's fairly large. Do you want the name on the sign, or do you want the name outside and
No.
just the sign as the
I think
logo?
it's nice because the name is a visual thing. If the sign is just the image and then there's the name somewhere else.
Okay, so yeah, that's fairly easy to do, and you can speak to Hawkins about painting the lettering on the outside if you want that like a
Victorian
pub,
shop.
yeah, or a nowadays pub, similar to
Yeah,
the
that's
3D
true.
gold lettering, but
Yeah.
it'll be painted rather than that. So Hawkins is quite a skilled painter, so that should be fine. In terms of the design, do you want it 3D a little bit, or do you want it flat? How do you
No, I
want
think
it carved?
flat, so it's more of a recognizable shape. So it's a
Okay.
simple shape.
Okay, so yeah, they can chisel into that to make it so that it's an impression rather than a bulge.
Mhm.
The sign itself, given that it's their design and things, would probably cost 30 gold.
Okay, I will do that. Cool.
And because you're also wanting it a little bit rush jobbed,
Mm,
it's that much because it's a little bit
Yeah,
quicker. So
too real
yes,
now.
they come the night before the opening. It is that close, and present it. It is a very, very nicely made sign. It looks very professional. Do you want it to be in colour, or
Thought about that. Any
I'm
thoughts?
kind of thinking a
The
possibility
colour would be nice.
could be like a dark blue background
Yeah.
with then bits of silverish paint to pick out the sand
Yeah.
in the hourglass.
Yeah, that works for me.
Yeah, so
We
it's
can
kind of
make it.
Blue is kind of like cold as well, which is like where I'm from.
We can make it look like the logo you designed, Michael.
Well, it's similar.
Mm.
Yeah,
Or the elements.
but I'm thinking more curled in terms of the hourglass shape rather than geometric.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So that is made. That is brought to you. It is now the night before the day that your pub opens.
So I've presumably been to the
Yes,
permit
we'll
office.
say that goes by fairly easily.
We don't.
I don't
role
want
play
to.
that.
We've done quite a lot of admin already. I don't really want to roleplay that. So
Yeah,
the
Can
doc
I help you?
the doc
Fine.
permit the doc
Fine.
permit is fairly easy to sort out. There are a few different periods of time that you can have it over. You can have it for 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months, and they are cheaper if you get them for longer. So the 3-month one is 10 gold. The 6-month one is 18 gold, and the year one is 29 gold.
I feel I'll go for the year
Okay.
one.
And then in terms of the gambling permit, Waterdeep, the Lords take 5% of your takings, whatever they are, and the permit itself costs 30 gold.
How much do you want that gambling?
Yeah, he signs it.
Okay. Cool. So that's sorted. But that said, the permit lasts in perpetuity as long as you are giving that 5%.
Cool.
This is where we find out that Lor'athel has a massive gambling problem.
I'll
Is
never
it
tell.
Not a
The
criminal.
5% of the gambling earnings, not the whole business.
No,
Okay.
no, just the gambling part.
Cool.
He's just good at dice. He's not like a gambler. There is a difference.
Yeah, and as well, in terms of licensing for the pub and for the running of the business and stuff, the way that it works in Waterdeep is that it is a tax as opposed to paying for a license or a thing. So it's an annual thing. Tax takers will come by and look at your books. So you'll need probably one of the servants to be the accountant, essentially, who goes over that. And
That's
if
cool.
there's any irregularities, then obviously they will investigate and things like that. But yeah, they take that via a tax. They just find that a little bit easier.
Yeah.
Okay, so are there any last minute preparations that you want to do?
I don't think so.
Musicians?
Well, you obviously have Juniper, if she's
Yeah.
willing
Are you
to
happy to just
perform for you.
do it on your own? It's up to you if you
I
want
think
backup.
for an opening night, she can
We're
probably...
at a point of no return quest.
Yes.
Essentially, you are, yeah.
I feel like Juniper is quite experienced in sort of holding on her own shows. I think as obviously the pub grows, it'll probably be worth looking into getting more people, especially given that it's quite short notice.
Yeah. Jess,
think
can I
it's-
just ask, are you using a plugged-in mic?
Yes.
Okay, can you just check that it is like properly in and everything? Because I keep getting this little weird like interference.
Oh, I'll unplug it and re-plug it back in and check it's switched microphone. Yeah, plug and play sound device. Yes.
Okay, fingers crossed. It might be, I'm sorry I'm not trying to put this on you. It might be that when you move, it moves the cable a little bit, but we'll have to see. Sorry about that. So, Juniper, I think, do you have as your background entertainer?
Yes, I believe so.
So that, I believe, gives you free board at pubs and things, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah.
So if you own your own pub, I think we could feasibly say that we flip that, and it means that people are more willing to spend money when you're performing.
Yeah, so let's go with that. They'll be like, oh, what delightful dog music.
Yeah.
Listen, closer.
We have so many unique selling points.
Such melodic barking.
Well, I mean, there is that channel that plays dog programming, isn't there? So it's similar to that dog music.
It's very important. Yeah, I think for the opening night, we are trying to showcase the essence of our group and what the pub represents. So it makes sense to have a very Juniper heavy performance, even if that does change as time goes on.
Okay. So
As long as you're happy to basically be working for the evening.
I mean,
Because we can't just have a playlist that we like press. You know, when they're like the live performing, we're just like, I'll just do a playlist on.
okay, are you wanting to hire anybody else for opening night? Are you thinking that your servants and yourselves will work the bar and the tables and everything?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned food as well. Are you wanting to have that as a continuous thing?
Do we have a kitchen?
You do, yeah.
We might need to hire a chef unless one of the other three was planning on doing that. I don't really know kind of what they had planned in terms of the everyday running of it.
Yeah, they were leaving that up to you. They didn't know whether you
Okay.
wanted a chef. They didn't know whether you wanted to serve food because obviously that's another expense.
Yeah.
You need to make sure and vet staff members and things like that. So it may be a longer term thing in order to do that.
I'm not that fussed about food. I feel like we can do it or we don't, you know.
This party's more, the doors are open, let's have a piss up.
Yeah.
I think so. I think especially in this area, it might go down fairly well.
Okay, so Juniper's performing. Erallur, what do you think you'll be doing for the majority of the night? Do you think you'll be
On the bar?
Yeah?
Yeah, like that sort of thing, tidying tables.
Okay. So
basically
kind of...
my real job.
Escapism. So hosting
kind
of thing and bar person.
Yeah.
Okay.
But hopefully not the only one. I think
I think Hawkins and Dawkins are planning to do that as well.
Yeah.
They're quite used to preparing food and drink and all that sort of stuff.
Lor'athel is clearly running the gambling section behind a red velvet curtain. He's just there with his little bow tie, you know.
Lor'athel did not realise that there would be actual working in the pub involved. It would be an ownership thing. So he expresses that he'll do hosting things but doesn't commit to anything.
Okay. So you're basically a glorified doorman who's not going to stand near the door for a while.
Who said anything about the door?
And Flint, are you doing anything in particular?
I imagine if I'm asked about hosting or customer service in any capacity, I just gesture to myself.
I think you'd be great on the bar.
I could stand on the door. I could stand behind the bar, but
You do the drinks prep, because I don't really know anything about that. And I'll serve them and do the customer servicey stuff.
I mean, I can pour and I can drink, but that's pretty much the extent of it.
That's fine.
Okay.
Don't just don't drink more than we're selling.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so I will say for that, Juniper, could you make a performance check for me?
Yeah, certainly.
Erallur, could you make a performance check for me? Flint, you have an ability to find fresh water and drink and food.
I do, yes.
Okay, and you're quite au fait with drinks and mixing and stuff. So this is an odd check, but I would say make a medicine check with advantage for your drink mixing.
10.
Erallur?
17.
Juniper?
29.
Okay, and then Lor'athel, in terms of the gambling stuff, are you wanting that to run on opening night?
Yes.
I think it should, yeah.
Yeah, but more of like there is space for it. I think he's not running it. It's just like gambling is allowed here. And he's trying to nip in and out.
Like how pubs have like board games that live in the corner, so you can play board games, but you also could just sit at the table and not play board games.
It's less casino and more like we have a license, so if you end up gambling at your table, you won't get kicked out.
Okay, that's an interesting loophole in the takings. I would imagine Waterdeep would try and make sure that there is a table rental price.
Lor'athel didn't read the contract.
Yeah.
We sent the wrong person.
That's going to be interesting. Okay. So, Flint, with this limited supply of alcohol that you have, you're fairly confident with the things that you're able to give. It's mostly fairly simple. Not many people ask for mixed drinks. And then occasionally when you are asked for a mixed drink, you kind of just cobble it together. And people seem to enjoy them, even if it's not exactly what you want. You're not really sure what a Baldur's Gate triple is. But, you know, you make it. You make something. It's colourful. They seem to enjoy it. You're not sure that they know what it is either. But yeah, the night seems to go. There's a couple of points where a few sailors get aggressive, but you see that when they spot that you're in sailorish garb and have the fishing hooks in your beard, that calms them down a little bit. Erallur, people are a little bit rough around the edges, but you are able to elicit politeness from them. They seem quite happy. There's quite a few people who come in or are encouraging other people in as they come in off the docks. It looks like this is a good time of year for it, particularly as it's the festival, and that more people are coming into Waterdeep because it's springtime. So people are coming in for work. They're migrating back into the less temperate parts of Faerun. So people come through this port city in order to do that. Looks like you've hit upon quite a good date for that.
When people leave, can I do that salesperson thing where I stand by the door and I'm like, you know, basically, thank you for coming, come back again soon, but I'm going to specifically say, come back to try our speciality ale or whatever it is that we're making.
Yeah, I will say with that persuasion check, you can definitely do that. And more
so I'm
than
going
a
to
few
make
of
sure
them,
that people know.
Yeah, and more than a few of them seem quite positive about the idea. So yes, definitely. The money flows very well on the opening night. Juniper, your music is beautiful. It is beguiling, and the dark lute plays wonderfully to your fingers. It seems to actually lead to the slightly bawdy atmosphere that you were imagining perhaps would happen, particularly with the sailors and the number of the guards that turn up, along with the dock official that you had a bit of a run-in with, Flint. There's a little bit of tension to start with, but once the music starts flowing alongside the alcohol, things seem to actually flow quite nicely.
My goodness, we're going to cure this social divide with music.
You can see that some of the guard are gambling against some of the sailors. And yeah, it seems like more than a few people leave with more friends than they came with.
What more do you want?
All in all, for opening night, you gain, let me do some dice rolls here.
Are we having like a separate bank account for this?
Yeah, we definitely. I'm going to leave the other three in charge of monies because they had a whole bunch of money that I gave them to set it up. So I guess we just put it in that pot.
Okay, so on the opening night, you earn 190 gold.
That pays for the stuff we bought.
Pretty much.
Towards the end of the night, Lor'athel half staggers over to Erallur by the door.
Has Lor'athel been drinking all night?
Lor'athel's been hosting.
So yes.
So yes.
With a large item behind his back. Goes up to Erallur. Everything seems to be going well.
I'm completely sober.
She says.
I'm completely sober.
So am I.
Yeah, it does seem to be going very well. What have you been doing?
Hosting.
I can see that.
People seem to be enjoying themselves. I think we've got something good here. Hey, listen.
I-
Listen. No, listen. I wanted you to have something to put up behind the bar. We've got something to remember Velios by. God, I miss him so much.
I just like pet.
I'm
worried he's going to throw up, so I'm just quite worried.
It's fine. I'll go and get myself a drink. But it doesn't seem right that we don't have anything to remember your family by. So I want you to have this, and I want you to put it up somewhere nice. And then from behind my back,
My dad's arm, like on a bit of wood, like a talking fish.
Fletchwell, the family shield that I've been using all this time, and can
Aww.
hold it out to her.
It's wobbling quite substantially.
I take it quickly before he does anything stupid. Is it like wall mountable already, or like is it just a shield on its own?
You would have to get wall mounts, but
Not all of the scratches were my fault.
That's very thoughtful. Are you sure you don't need it?
I'm good. I'm just gonna. You're a good wizard, and then I pat her on the shoulder and walk off.
Amazing. Okay.
If you now equip that, I'll kill you.
I don't think I'm proficient in shields. I'm just going to look at it for a bit and then smile a little bit and then nip upstairs to put it safely somewhere.
Okay. Oh, that was good confidence trick, Kathryn.
Oh my god.
So for reference, for podcast listeners, Simon handed the sheet with the stats for Fletchwall on it virtually to Kathryn, who then virtually had a sheet of paper the exact same size, which was very impressive.
We do the perfect beard decoration.
Opening night comes to a close. You are all very tired. Some of you are a lot drunker than others.
How much
Juniper,
did Flint have?
I've been sneaking bits behind the bar.
I don't know. I thought that was very
Constitution check,
sneaky.
Flint. And a sleight of hand check.
One for me, one for you, one for me.
I mean, you're not far off.
I feel like he's more like a mother bird, and he just swills it and then.
Oh.
So I rolled the same for both of them. So
Okay.
let's
That's
see.
the special brew.
So is it a Constitution saving throw?
It is.
So a Constitution saving throw, that is 25.
Okay.
And then for sleight of hand, I don't know why this is as high as it is, but 23.
Okay.
I've got a +6 modifier on sleight of hand.
Why?
I've never had to use
Why
sleight
are
of
you
hand.
proficient in that?
I have no idea.
Erallur, can you roll a perception check? Because I'm assuming that you are wary of Flint.
I'm basically
Stompling.
like the manager right now.
Yeah.
So, 16.
Okay. You're pretty sure that Flint is a likely person to sample the wares, but at no point during the night do you spot him doing so, and he is perfectly sober.
I know. It's fine. It's allowed. It's the opening night, but I don't know.
Juniper, at various points during the night, you garner applause, you garner cheers. You also have a small amount of coin thrown up onto
Ooh.
your performance
Ow.
space. It doesn't hit you, but yeah, you managed to get 27 gold from just people
Nice.
flicking coins onto the It's all in different denominations, but we'll just say for ease, it's 27 gold.
Oh, that's much easier. I hate it when I've got silver and copper. It's like, what is this?
Okay, so you all go to bed, having had a successful time.
Oh, can I? We don't have to play through this, but I would have checked that Dawkins was all right at some point in the lead up to the party.
Yes, that's fine. So Dawkins, a little bit reluctant to talk to you, but after a little while just explains that despite the fact that he and his fellow servants were never really accepted that well at Fort Argent, mainly because it was a majority human place, he still considered it home. And he had been trusted by your father to a degree and brought in and to look after you. It was quite a privilege, even though obviously some people saw it as a chore because of your magic and because of your reputation. So he's got complicated feelings on it, but it looks like Hawkins has managed to talk things through with him, has managed to bring him back to a reasonable place. But as with most things, it'll just take time.
Oh yeah, I'm not surprised by his. I'm not like, what?
Yeah.
You have feelings, but all three of them, do I get the sense that they're happy to continue staying on more as business partners than?
Yeah, it looks
I
like
don't want
it.
them to be servants, basically.
No, it looks like it. Obviously, that would require you to pay them more.
Yeah. Well, I think I was thinking more of a percentage type thing.
That makes sense. But also during opening night, you can see that Dawkins and Hawkins seem to be in each other's orbits a little bit more than they have been before. And you also notice with that perception check, there are a couple of moments where Dawkins seems to waver a little bit as the pressure seems to get to him and he seems a little bit more emotional. But you just also notice that at those moments, Hawkins seems to notice as well and just takes his hand behind the bar and just holds it a little bit firmly. And he seems to steady him at those points.
That's nice. Cool.
Going onward into the downtime you have ahead, Flint, I believe that there were some certain things that you wanted to do during this year-long extended period of respite.
Yes, so first off, I'll probably stick around, make sure that the pub is well established, and I'll continue serving, but also drinking a fair amount of the alcohol that comes in.
Okay, Erallur, can you make an investigation check for me?
Yeah.
Flint, could you do a deception?
I feel like I'm just going to come across like the worst manager that just can't see the obvious thing right under her nose. Yeah, 11.
Better than my 3.
So it's pretty obvious.
Yeah, within a...
I'm not trying to sort of conceal it, really. I'm like, it's our pub.
Within 3 days, you know that Flint is taking a little bit too much of the alcohol for it to be profitable.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it may be a case of either he has to pay or he has to stop.
I, in a typical manager fashion, leave a note
Oh, God.
that says, to all staff.
Oh, no.
Oh, so passive-aggressive.
As a goodwill gesture, you may have X amount of free product or whatever. Above this, you can use a tab. This is basically our real life situation.
Some of this.
Did you?
Well, we all put money into the alcohol, did we not?
Yeah, but this is going above Flint.
Yeah.
Wow.
This is so much like our real job.
I see the note and I'm suddenly brought back to earth, and I like some escapism, so I stop drinking as much.
Okay.
And
also, I believe you mean that you're brought back to Toril rather than you're brought back to Earth.
Yes. But yeah, so I'm going to stick around for a bit. There are a couple of things I want to do specifically in Waterdeep while we're here. So I'm going to take advantage of the fact that this is a large metropolitan city with a lot of resources. So I'm going to set up a small workshop, either in our room, if Juniper doesn't mind, or around the back. But yeah, just a little area where I can tinker. I've still got the dragon scales that we got, so I want to do either one of two things. Either I want to upgrade my armor, so it's a little more effective than it is currently.
So what kind of armor do you have now?
So at the moment, I have, I believe, a studded leather armor.
Okay.
But I was thinking I can either try and bump my armor class up or just take a look at the scales, incorporate it into my currently existing armor, and maybe gain some cold resistance, like the white dragon would have had but
Okay.
it's your call.
So what's your dex at the moment?
It is a measly +2.
Okay, so your armor class is 14?
Yes.
Okay, so in terms of the workshop, yours and Juniper's room is not very large.
Mm-hmm.
So to start with, given that the extension of the bar that Erallur had discussed with the business partners,
Employees, I don't know.
yeah, would take slightly longer, obviously. So in terms of that, I would say for progression, it would probably make sense if you had a tool bench and
Actually,
hung up the tools in your small room to start with.
tell you what, to make it entirely separate from the pub, I'll just set up a little workshop on my boat.
Fair enough.
So
Again,
separate.
it'd be a fairly small setup.
Yeah.
Presumably you want it to be covered.
Yeah, so I'll probably do it inside. I mean, I chose the slightly larger boat in any case, because it was, I believe it was one that could fit 7 or 8 people, I think, from the conversation with
It's the single master. It is slightly larger, and it does have a cabin, but it wouldn't necessarily sleep 7 or 8 people.
Yeah, because I think I picked it out because in future, from a meta point of view, it would be able to fit all of us on if needs be.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, but some people might have to sleep out on the deck.
Yeah.
But
cool.
then again, there are fewer of you now. So,
And some of us
and-
don't sleep the whole way through.
yeah, and depending on whether you wanted to create more of a cover so that it's all closed in, you could do that. It's up to you. So yeah, that's feasible. In terms of what kind of things you want in the workshop, obviously you've got your artificer's tools already.
Yeah.
So are you thinking maybe a workbench?
Yeah, just a workbench. I mean, I've got most of what I need already. It's just a space to do it that's out of the way, because I've got all the tools I need. It's just getting additional materials for the actual building.
So in terms of that, obviously I have an idea of what you want to do with the boat as well.
Yeah.
Are you wanting to fold the furnace idea into having a kiln in the workshop?
No, that would work. Yeah. To heat metal and whatnot.
So it's a multi-purpose furnace. Okay, so first of all, in trying to build the furnace, which isn't technically a new technology, but you're perhaps putting it to a use it's not been put to extensively, if at all.
Yeah.
I would say make a tinkering check for that, first of all. So that's proficiency, intelligence, and the roll.
Okay, so that's 23.
Okay, that's fantastic. So you are very aware of what counterbalances you would need in a ship, how to get the best and lightest metal whilst not being too expensive. Obviously, the perfect metal would be mithril, but it's not as readily available as you would prefer. So you managed to persuade a few traders here and there to give you the right amounts and give you what you need. Again, it's a little bit costly. It would probably set you back 750 gold.
Yeah, that's okay.
For the furnace setup. But you now have a boat that is a little bit deeper into the water with the weight, but you now have a functional furnace. And the mast has been removed, and you now have a long black chimney that arches into the sky.
Yeah, Steamboat Willie this shit.
It certainly looks like that's where you're going. In terms of the armour, there are a couple of things that you could do with your artificer knowledge. Either you could rework the studs by breaking the scales down and making them the studs, which would give you a +1 to the armour. It would still be studded leather, but it would be +1 armour and give you cold resistance.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Or you could break down the scales a little bit more and make scale armour, so scale mail, which would be an armour class of 14 plus maximum of 2 dex and cold resistance. Or you could try and make the scales, because they're fairly large in comparison to your body, as in one would probably fit over your chest and over your back. And I believe you said in your messages you have 3.
I think I have 3, yeah.
So you might need to rework a few bits of it in order to make a full upper body piece. But you could probably make half plate, which would be 15 plus 2 and grant the cold resistance.
Yeah, I might go for that one. Just because
To give you disadvantage on stealth.
it gives me disadvantage on stealth. But
Not on half plate, it doesn't. Oh no, it does. Yeah, sorry.
yeah.
I was reading wrong lines. Yeah.
But that's okay. I mean, my stealth isn't great anyway, and I don't think Flint is overly concerned about stealth. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so roll another tinkering check for that then.
Okay.
The DC is lower because you're doing less with the scales.
Thank Christ. So that's 14.
Okay, yeah, you managed to make it a fairly workable set of armor, particularly having Erallur's cuirass as a point of reference for the half plate kind of thing. You managed to fit a few buckles and bands through the two scales that you're using as the chest piece and the back piece. And then you managed to break down the third scale for gauntlets and shoulder pieces that glitter with the frost and blue of the white dragon that you pulled them from. And when you put them on, you suddenly feel a brief chill that then dissipates and you feel warmer than you have before. It's an odd feeling. And when, I presume, you come and show the others this?
Yeah, I'll give a little twirl to everyone.
So Flint comes in pristine, and I mean even more pristine than Lor'athel's armor, glittering white pieces that cover his upper body.
Still have no sleeves. That's very important.
Yeah, but you've got the gauntlets and the pieces over the shoulder.
Yeah.
Very well made.
I'm just going to
dragon scale armor.
So clean.
It won't be for long, trust me. And I don't want to take up too much time, but the only other thing I wanted to do, other than improve my dex while I'm out at sea, is so I've got the Behir gland and I've got the remnants of the moth from Fort Argent. So I want to either incorporate it into truffle or into one of my gauntlets, something that can replicate its Behir's lightning breath as like a one-off thing I can use. And yeah, because to offset the fact I'm not using any of my spells would be useful.
Okay, that's doable. Yes, so there's a couple of options there too. If you're wanting to fit that to truffle, I would say that it would maybe be as an alternative to the acid breath. So almost you could build a small canister that would swap out with the acid breath one.
Okay. Would that still have a recharge of 5 to 6?
It would, yes.
Okay.
So it's because the Behir's gland recharges in a very similar way, it would likely work very similarly. So you could do that and use it as, say, you could go, oh, well, in this fight, if you were expecting a fight or if you're expecting a certain thing, you could go, well, I want to swap out that cartridge for this one.
Okay.
So that, again, would be simpler because you have already built truffle and know how it works. So the DC would be lower.
Yeah.
Or if you're wanting to do a gauntlet piece or something like a wristband that then will do almost a lightning discharge, that will be more complicated, but obviously would be armored onto you.
Yeah. I'll try the one on to me then, because it might be useful to have both in combat, just in case.
Okay, so that would preclude you having it on truffle. You've only got one gland. So you'll have to sit. Okay. So I'll say for this one, make a nature check, first of all.
Okay. Sorry, everyone. I'll be done shortly.
Okay. I have more.
We've probably all got similar lists of things, don't worry.
16.
16. Okay. Yeah, you struggle with it a little bit in terms of getting the gland to do what you want. There are various ways that you try to work out how the packet is able to maintain its charge, and you sense that it's a quality of the blood in the Behir, which takes you a little while to work out that it's both that and something that it eats. It takes you a while to discern what it is, but it's particular metal that conducts quite well within their diet. They eat quite a lot of stones in order to break up some of the vegetation and meat that they use. So you work out eventually what that compound is and are able to actually work out a supply of that. It would be similar to your gunpowder in that you might need to buy that again after a certain number of charges, but you manage to make it efficient enough within the gland itself that you're fairly confident you can build an armband that will then send the charge through your gauntlet.
Okay.
So make another artificer's check to see how well the gauntlet piece goes.
That's 15.
Again, takes a little while, longer than you want it to, particularly as you're itching to get out on the sea. But you eventually manage to use the pieces of the moth because you know that that was able to discharge the current quite well. Unfortunately, some of the pieces are a little bit delicate, so you do end up breaking them, but you manage to have enough left that you can form a leather strap with a piece of metal over the flattened out gland that goes around your wrist, that then connects to your gauntlet and goes up the middle finger in plates over the top of the ice dragon scales. So you've got this single middle finger piece which is all metal and is the similar slightly spiked gauntlet pieces. And there is one night, everyone, where there is a sudden flash of blue from just outside the pub, and as this discharge of energy shoots into the sky. It looks like lightning, but it's going the wrong way. And this, Flint, signals the success of your strange lightning wristband. And again, this device would do the same as Bahir's lightning gland in terms of damage, but as a result of that would recharge on a 5 or a 6.
Oh, amazing. Oh, yes.
Similar to Truffle's breath weapon.
Nice. Okay. Thank you very much.
So because it's going through you and the charge might be a little bit strong, it may do a little bit less damage. I'll try and work out the mechanics. But,
yeah, no, that's fine.
You know, I'll have a look because I can't call to mind how much. I'm pretty sure the lightning is quite effective.
It's 12d10.
Yeah, so it's not going to do that.
Are you joking?
Yeah, so that's why I was thinking maybe like once per long rest or something, so it's not too OP. But
Yeah.
Well, I'll work out the details in terms of that because I've mainly improved how it works.
Yeah,
so it might be
okay.
that it recharges on a 6.
Yeah,
rather than a 5 and a 6, and it'll probably do a little bit more limited. Because if it was 12d10, it would probably kill you just by going through your body. So
more dice than I need for 5.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
give every big bad end boss like the middle finger and they'll die.
It also, for the development of those things and the tinkering and the experimentation you would have to do, I would say that it costs you another 250 gold in materials and research and all that sort of stuff.
Cool, that's absolutely fine.
Loaded.
Yeah.
Okay, so you have achieved those inventions. You have secured a lab for your boat. Is there anything else you'd like to do?
I'm gonna just say farewell to everyone, and especially Juniper. I sort of sit down with her like the day of and just say to her, "You're gonna be all right here. You've got enough to do."
Juniper looks at Flint and goes, "I think so, but you promised you'd be back, so that's okay."
Yeah, no, of course it will be. I'll be back. And when I am, we can take my boat out, sail around the docks of Waterdeep for a bit, and I can teach you how to steer a ship. How does that sound?
That sounds great. And if there's any octopuses, then you can fight them off.
Absolutely. I will. I'll bring them back as proof.
Yeah. But will Staffy be going with you?
Tell you what, and I hand over Truffle and I say, "You can keep a hold, and this way, when I tap the scrying stone on my gauntlet, I'll be able to keep an eye on you. And you can let me know if you're missing me, if you need anything, or if you just want to chat. I'm,
Saying you could totally do it the other way around.
Well, also that, but I need some time. Oh, hi, Erallur.
You might want the company of... It's fine, I'm not.
It's fine.
Staffy's like, you might want to take me with you.
I think she just hugs him.
Staffy's just happily going, "Hi, Juniper."
Hi, Staffy. We're going to look after each other for a bit.
Yay!
I have plans.
Dun, dun, dun.
Dark plans.
So yeah, and with that, I'll say farewell to the other two, and I'll head on out on my boat, which I will have christened the Gilder.
Okay.
When you say goodbye, I'm sad, but I'm also secretly like, oh, we might finally make a profit.
I mean, who knew? Like, she was so secretly capitalist.
She only complains about how much taverns cost all the time.
Oh my God. I mean, how far are you into Buffy at the moment?
Oh my God, she is!
Yeah.
Yeah. You're Anya.
Oh no! Probably why I don't like her very much.
Okay, so as the year passes the months pass, are you wanting to improve the boat any more?
Yeah, I'll tinker a little bit. I think for the most part, it's pretty much what I want it to be. It's just a little workspace away from home. But yeah, no, I'm fairly happy. Yeah.
Okay, so the last thing is obviously you wanted to improve your decks.
Yes,
So
please.
with all of the sailing that you're doing, because it is still sailing, because the furnace doesn't power the boat at this point,
Yeah.
because you've not quite worked that out, and doing that at sea is quite difficult.
Yeah.
So yeah, over the time, because it's a number of months, I will allow you to gain the squat nimbleness feat.
Ooh,
So
nice.
that gives you a +1 to dex. It improves your movement by 5 feet, so you can now move 30 feet, I
I
believe.
can keep pace with
Aww.
everyone else.
I think Juniper's still only at 25 feet.
Yeah, I think I am.
Yeah.
Yep, little feet, little legs.
And you have proficiency and advantage in acrobatics and athletics when trying to escape with those checks.
Okay.
Okay, so that is Flint's year. Lor'athel, what are you wanting to do?
Oh, hello. It's me. Okay, so Lor'athel is going to use the time to do some combat training.
Okay.
So he buy like a training dummy or something like that to
Yeah.
have in the yard of the pub.
Yeah, definitely. That would cost you 10 silver, probably, or a gold. I don't know why I said it as 10 silver. They're the same.
Yeah, so Lor'athel will spend a lot of time honing his skills, specifically trying to move into a less protected combat style. He's going to move more towards using Warden two-handed. So spends the time practicing.
He's realised how capable we all are. We don't need protection.
It never comes up. It's good we're never stood near each other. Yeah,
To be honest,
so,
I'd probably cause you more damage.
wants to become more effective at ending threats quickly. So yeah, trains at that and tries to move towards the great weapon fighting proficiency instead of the protection proficiency.
Okay, so are you just training on your own, or are you employing somebody to train you, or what?
Every now and again, there's like another thing. Being in the city for this long doesn't suit Lor'athel very well. The Wanderlust is too strong a call, and sticking around and running a business is really for him. So he ends up wandering the city quite a lot. And I would imagine he would maybe find a group of people to spar with, not necessarily in any kind of group official capacity, but just other people interested in sparring and training.
Okay, yeah, that works. Can you roll an athletics check for me, please?
I can. 26.
Lovely. So you had trained in a number of different disciplines as a base before you became a scout. So you know the basic principles of shifting your style. It takes you a little while to get out of the muscle memory of hefting a shield, but because Warden is lighter than a shield would be, and you're using both hands in order to do it, you get to a point where you are brutally efficient and able to move it very swiftly through the kata of the swordplay that you are aiming for. The sparring definitely helps, and it takes you roughly 3 months in order to switch over your fighting style, which is very quick considering how long you have been working with a shield. So you achieve the great weapon fighting discipline, you lose the defensive one. Obviously, you can retrain in it if you choose to, but having both active isn't really mechanically sound. So that's absolutely fine.
Does he make any friends with the people that he fights with?
Given that you're wandering around the city, and I assume around the environs as well,
Yeah.
you do make a couple of people that you see more than once, but generally the sword people that you have around Waterdeep are similarly transient because they're adventurers or they're soldiers or mercenaries. They don't stay around that long. So there's a couple of them you see over that period, maybe twice, but they're no more than good acquaintances, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Okay.
I feel like he wouldn't attach himself necessarily.
He's just hearing about all their stories of like going travelling and stuff, and he's like, "Oh, I've got to stay at this pub, work the gambling tables,
Makes him itchy. Yeah, itchy to kind of move
run
on.
from the law."
When has he ever done that?
We'll see.
Oh dear.
So what
Yeah.
next?
So, as well as that, I think he's making too much use of the pub as well. Drinking a fair bit, taking part in the gambling a bit too much.
Do you see my note?
Flint crumpled it up before he left.
Lor'athel does very little work around the pub.
Okay,
There's-
so for the gambling,
Yeah.
could you make a proficiency check with your dice proficiency?
Is that just a roll plus proficiency?
Yes.
21.
You clean up. You make quite a lot of money from your endeavours, almost to the point where people are starting to think that maybe it's a little bit rigged.
It goes into our collective funds, right?
It
It's not
does,
like his
yeah.
personal money.
No, but depending on whether you want to work out the table rental, that will obviously go into the collective, but his winnings are his.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I didn't
Yeah.
mean the winnings, yeah.
So over the course of the time, you actually manage to win a sizable chunk, which would come in at 1,000 gold.
Oh, God. Nice. Lor'athel cleans house.
But
Yeah.
you don't mind having a pub now.
But because you clean up so well and people know that you are part owner of this place, they do start to suspect that maybe it's a little bit rigged.
Oh, no. Oh, no. This makes Lor'athel a bit miserable because he's struggling to make new friends. Nobody really wants to play with him after a while. It sounds like it's Rugrats, isn't it? Nobody wants to play with me.
Yeah.
In a particularly down night, he stumbles a little bit drunk out onto the dock and may or may not see something in the water.
Okay, make a wisdom saving throw. With disadvantage because you're drunk.
Aha! 17.
Okay. You stagger out onto the pier from which you threw the hilt of the sword, and you look out onto the horizon and you see the city lights reflecting across the water towards that far-flung horizon. You think you see maybe a couple of boats out there with their magical lanterns lit. You
I see any that look like Flints.
It's possible. There's a couple that have lights lower down, close to the bow, but they're quite a distance off, so you're not entirely sure. You turn to your right and you can see the curve of the city around the bay. You can see the Black Star's tower, the light winking and illuminating the long shadows of the statues that lie just nearby. And as you just glance at the water, you catch a strange sound that emanates up from the waves. And it's just a strange growling noise that makes you look down into the water, and you think for a moment that you see a whirl of teeth in a large mouth. And as something whispers in the back of your head, you blink and then realise that it's just a bit of netting that's drifted into the shallows.
Okay. Regardless, this doesn't sit well with Lor'athel. He spends less and less time down at the dock, doesn't like going near the harbour at all, and starts to bury himself in the libraries or any of the magic shops looking for any sort of information at all on Abeloths and encounters with Abeloths, because he knows this thing, or thinks this thing isn't done with him.
Okay, roll an investigation check then.
8.
It's difficult. You don't find a lot of detail. You find a few general bestiaries that mention the word, but other than knowing that they're an extraplanar entity, and some come from the water plane, there isn't talk of deals. There isn't any talk of any encounters with them, or them coming through, other than in what you regard as fairly apocryphal, fanciful stories. It's not fairy tales as such, but there's definitely not the grain of verisimilitude that you would usually associate with convincing tales of encounters with them. You also do find in some of the magical shops that people claim to have ground up aboleth tooth or tentacle, and it seems to have a medicinal property, but you're pretty sure they're charlatans and they're lying to you.
Naughty people. Naughty shopkeepers. Okay, so Lor'athel goes to the first time that he's been there for a while. It doesn't really say where he's been staying. Doesn't shed a lot of light on what he's been up to. Gathers Juniper and Erallur and Hawkins, Dawkins and Hawkins as the joint owners and equal members of this party.
They're employees. I've decided they're employees.
Oh,
Oh.
they're
Makes more
beneath
sense.
us.
They've been downgraded. Do they know this?
No, they just. I think that's just always how it was.
Okay.
It's just better than servant, though, isn't it?
Like an awkward conversation. Mark Zuckerberg. Hello, everyone. I'm sorry I've not been around very much. I'm sorry I've not really been a very good friend for the past few weeks. But the place is looking good. It's looking good. Listen, I want to go away for a while. I don't really think sitting around here is for me, and I need a change of pace, I think. I've been thinking a lot recently about making amends and putting things right, and I want to go and see if I can find my family.
That sounds like a really good idea. Do you
Hoping
need
I
any
can
help?
alert to staffing.
I'm sure we can replace you. We'll just get Lor'athel the skeleton. He can work the bar. No, the gambling table. I think that makes more sense.
Well, I'll tell you what, Juniper, if you can make him good at dice, then
But
maybe
not too
I'll overlook it.
I think Juniper looks at her feet and hugs Lor'athel's legs.
I'm going to miss you guys. But I think I just need some time away from here.
You'll let us know if you need anything.
Oh, I'll let you know.
You know where we are.
I'll let you know.
Don't go disappearing.
Never.
Wait, I just realised that's so rich.
I'll leave in the morning, so don't think that we have to feel sad or anything. Come on. And then he reaches behind the bar and grabs a bottle and starts to pour.
You may have a drink for free.
He reaches and grabs his quarter of the bottle. And then after a night of carousing, make his way to the city gate. We don't have horses at the moment, do we?
No.
I'll buy a horse.
Do we need them?
Okay.
Call him
Hang on. Wait, no. Was it in Waterdeep where we definitely came across Mableshine, but didn't tell us?
That horse may or may not have been Mableshine. You're not sure.
Yeah.
I like to think that it was.
I can neither confirm nor deny that fact.
Yeah. I like to think of it where it's like our adventures have been like Pixar films, and Mableshine is like road past in the background.
Planet Man.
Yeah. If there's ever an animated version of this, that will be like the Pizza Planet Man. Yeah. So I'll buy a horse and sit off.
Okay. What kind of horse are you looking for? Are you looking for a stallion or a gelding or what?
I think he's looking for a good mix of speed and endurance.
Okay, that would cost you 60 gold.
I still have my horse because it's still in my inventory.
No, you don't. You left it behind.
But I named it and everything.
Yeah, but you left. I can't remember where. I think you left it behind before you went up into the glacier. I think.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
We got to get eaten by moths.
Probably eaten by
Moth
wolves.
horse.
It became a moth.
Did we just leave them? We're so bad with horses.
Really are.
It's a tradition of D&D parties. Just mounts, you go through them.
Disposable horses.
Okay, so do you set off for the high forest then?
Yes, yeah. So set off for the rough area where we last saw them and see if I can pick up the trail.
Okay, roll an investigation check then.
Sorry, guys, I will try and keep this short.
It's okay.
22.
So you go back to the part of the river that you parted with your family and that the rest of the denizens of Ardrathan went towards their fate. It's a little bit difficult. You know that the forest is still occupied by orcs quite a great deal.
Try and avoid going near the unicorn run as well.
Okay. I would say roll a survival check and roll a stealth check as well.
Survival is 23. Stealth at disadvantage. Oh, stealth at disadvantage is 7.
Okay. You managed to circle around the unicorn run on the correct side to where the parting happened and don't come across any orcs. You managed to avoid them or spot them ahead of time and managed to redirect the horse around. Eventually you come to that clearing. You can see that there are the number of footsteps that were there before. You pick up the various trails of the larger group going away. You pick up one trail that seemed to go in a slightly different direction to you, but it crosses the river. And once it crosses the river, you lose it, suggesting that they might have travelled a little way down the river before going on the other side. There's not a direct link. So without knowing exactly where they exited the river, it's a little bit difficult. And eventually you come back to the place thinking that maybe you could pick up the trail again. And as you do, you just hear the clank of armour moving towards you from the direction of the mountains, which is also the direction of where the entry to the Feywild would be.
Can I see anything coming?
Make a perception check.
Nice.
Okay. You don't see anything. The forest is quite dense around here, but you do still hear that clanking armour, and as you do so, you can hear just soft voices muttering to each other. It sounds like they're trying to keep it down, but not doing very well.
Okay. I sneakily move towards them.
Okay, make a stealth check.
4.
Okay. One of the voices stops, and the other voice continues for a moment, but then ceases. But the clanking carries on until you see a person in full armour walk into the clearing. They don't seem to have spotted you, but their armour is a little bit beaten up. It's full plate, and they are also wearing a helmet, but they are not large enough to be an orc. But there's only one of them.
Okay. Do I recognise what kind of armour it is?
Roll the history check.
6.
No, it's not a set that you're familiar with. It's not a style that you're familiar with. It's fairly simple, not adorned in any way. There's a few flecks of paint that look like they've been hit off it. And the original colour was a bright silver, and the paint over the top of it was a greeny blue. But a lot of the paint has been knocked off and chipped off now. You're not sure where they're from or what culture they might be originally from either.
For the time being, as best I can, I try and stay hidden to see what they do.
Okay, I would say make another stealth check then.
5.
So the person in armour just walks forward, seems a little bit suspicious of the surroundings, but doesn't make any moves towards your hiding place or anything, and just walks through the clearing towards the water. They then disappear out of sight, seemingly not having noticed you.
Right, okay. I begin to follow after them.
Okay, so you stand up out of your hiding place and you start to move, and then as you do, you hear a voice behind you saying, "Where do you think you're going?"
Oh, God. Who are you?
"Why are you following my sister?"
I wasn't following anybody.
And you see that the armoured individual just walks around a tree in the direction where they were going to turn to face you. And you can still feel the presence at your back of somebody else. So you weren't following her.
No, we can't. 2 sets of travellers stumble across each other in the woods.
But why were you hiding?
Well, you do know where we are. This is the high forest. It's not safe.
For
Would
some
you
people.
hide if you heard somebody coming?
For some people, it's not safe.
And you're saying for you it is?
Maybe.
I turn around.
Okay, there's nobody there.
I turn back around to look at the sister.
Still there, staring directly at you through the visor.
What are you?
Who are you addressing that to?
Sorry, the voice.
The voice is gone.
The voice is gone.
Accurate reaction.
I'm sorry if I startled you. I didn't mean to.
There's a long pause, and then the armoured figure seems to roll their head a little bit and then turn around and continue walking in the direction. And then a little bit longer passes and you hear the voice again finally say, "You just watch yourself," and then says no more.
Okay, right. So knowing that this is an area close to the Fae,
Mm-hmm.
I think Lor'athel would mainly just chalk this up to some Fae nonsense. He's going to carry on the course that he was going, actually. Because when they last spoke, they said they were kind of moving towards the mountains further north, I think.
So the larger body of the elves did, but your family said that they were going elsewhere.
Oh, but they never said where, did they?
No.
Okay. So for now, then, we'll go further north to try and reconnect with the larger group, if there is anybody there.
Okay, make another survival check then.
15.
You head in that direction, but as you do, the plant life seems to get more voracious and verdant. And you can see mushrooms and ferns and bucket flowers that seem to be larger and more virulent than a lot of the vegetation in the high forest. And you get the sense that you are treading very close to the influence of the Feywild here.
Okay.
The footsteps suggest that the elven host continued on deeper into the reach of the Feywild.
Lor'athel's going to carry on. As he proceeds, he says blessings to the elven gods, particularly Corellon, his god, but asking for safe passage and guidance as he goes further towards their influence.
Okay, make a religion check.
Oh, 14.
Okay. You do take some comfort from it. You're someone who's never ventured into the Feywild, but you've known of its presence and its influence over the surrounding area. So you think you know bits and pieces of what it might threaten, if anything. Eventually you come to a space in the forest that seems strangely devoid of life in comparison to the part that you've just passed through. But you do see a weaved wood archway that is just made of creeping vines and wood knitted together, but it doesn't look like a hand has guided it. It looks like it has just woven and twisted itself. And can you make a perception check?
Is this some good place shit? 16.
There is just a slight sheen between the archway. The ground beyond seems the same and seems to continue in the terrain, but there's a slight sheen that just ripples in the middle of the archway, and just for a moment, a bright purple and green shimmer across the landscape. So bright that it almost hurts your eyes.
I cautiously approach the archway and then very slowly and gently start to stick my hand out and just test it with the tips of my fingers.
Okay, as soon as you reach your hand through, the fingers, you just get a slight crackle of energy. The air seems to be different, of a different quality. And you see a small bead of light just comes to the end of your middle finger and settles there. And you feel the skitter of little legs. You think it might be a firefly, and then as it investigates your finger, it then takes off again. But your finger continues to glow with the odd light. And as you put more of your hand through, you slowly start to just hear a strange susurration tease around your ears.
He pushes on
Okay.
and walks through the gate.
Okay, so as you walk through, the susurration grows louder, and it's this just, and it just continues as you walk on. And the plant life here is very different, even to the strangeness of the stuff that you just passed through. There are gigantic plants. There are huge trees that are twisted together into strange tortured shapes, including ones that look like faces. Some of them similar size to yours, some of them gargantuan. You can see fairy circles of toadstools in various places dotted around this path. And there are flowers of every hue, of every size, including one that hangs down from the canopy just above the archway and drips sap onto the ground in thick globules that then flow around your feet as you step through it. It's a slightly tacky sensation as you move with the armor.
This is the most beautiful thing that Lor'athel has ever seen. He remembers obviously seeing landscapes and flora and fauna like this around the high forest, but nothing to this extent. Draws a tear from his eyes, reminds him of home, but then more. Is there any trace of passage?
Make a survival check.
Natural 20.
There are quite a few signs of passage. Some of them are what look like humanoid feet. Some of them are quite large hooves. Some of them seem to be incredibly large dog paws. And more than a few seem to be mucus trails. But you seem to think that there are a few boots that are recognisable, moving in a fairly straight line away from the doorway.
Can I just add in the fact that I tied up my horse outside of the wicker
Sure,
archway?
yeah, you could do that retroactively.
It's just like,
We just talked about this.
what's going on?
While we walk
It can
through
talk
the
now.
gate,
It's
my
magic.
animal companion. Yeah, I follow the humanoid.
Okay. Can you make a perception check for me then, please?
Ooh, 10.
You followed them for a while, but you soon find yourself walking in circles, and you end up back near the archway more than once, despite the fact that you went in a different direction and you're sure that you weren't, but you just find yourself back there, and it's starting to get frustrating.
he carries on trying over and over again.
So you're not sure how long you spend doing this. And the oddity of the sky is that it is always that strange purple green. And almost like the aurora, there are parts of it that streak across and turn red and indigo and blue and yellow. And the bits of the horizon that you occasionally see as you reach a hill and then dive back into the canopy, you see that it seems to be in perpetual twilight. So time passing, you have no idea how long you spend. And then eventually you get onto a place that you've not been before. A small copse of trees in a ring that have the red and white splotching of the toadstools that you've seen everywhere. And as you approach, you hear a strange noise emanating from out of this copse of trees. And it sounds like music, but it's jaunty and jagged, not like the harmonies that you know of Juniper. There's an element to it that is not of the material plane.
Is it anything like the music of home?
There are elements, but there are harmonies that you've never heard before, and notes that shouldn't work but somehow weave into it.
Go towards it.
Can you make a wisdom saving throw for me, please?
13.
Okay. As you walk towards it, you can feel it's starting to really sound great. It sounds really, really good. It sounds like it offers camaraderie and companionship, and it'd be a really good idea to go towards it.
Lor'athel goes towards
Sounds
it.
legit, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you walk
Super
between the
legit.
trees,
I see nothing wrong here.
and you eventually spot elven men and women moving through the trees. They are draped in quite light clothing that ripples as they dance with each other and swing past you. And as they do so, they smile at you and offer their hands to you in the dance. But it seems like they're moving too quickly for you to grab onto. And their features are slightly exaggerated. They have very high brows, very large ears, extremely chiseled cheekbones. And the litheness of their limbs and fingers is even beyond the wood elves and moon elves of the high forest that you've seen before. And as they move, they seem to draw you further in to this deep wood. And eventually you find yourself standing near what looks like a stage made out of tree branches and leaves and flowers, all twisted and knotted together. Some of it looks older and rotting, but some of it looks petrified, whereas the rest of it is very much alive. And sitting on benches jutting from the stage towards you, you can see various elven figures, or even a few humans, a couple of orcs, a few half-orcs, numerous races, all staring at the stage where nothing is happening. But occasionally, as you walk in and the music continues to swell, you see that they are laughing and then suddenly crying and then applauding and standing in an ovation. But the only thing that is happening is the music, and there are no people on the stage.
Lor'athel finds a spare seat and sits down with him.
Okay, can you make a wisdom saving throw with disadvantage, please?
5.
There wasn't a figure next to you before, but as you take the seat, there is suddenly an individual with short, stubby horns that come out of their forehead. And you just see rivulets of what look like sap dripping around underneath the bones and down their face in almost war stripes. They have a little bit of a goatee going, large curly hair. But the most interesting feature about them is that they are bare-chested and then have backwards legs that end in hooves that are covered in ruddy fur. And they look at you, and you can see that they are blowing on panpipes, an element of which is part of the music. And they don't stop, but then a voice says, "Welcome, friend. Do you come for the theatre?"
I don't know where I am.
"You're at the theatre. Do you wish to see?"
I was looking for my family. Do you know where they are?
"They're here,
Where?
right before you." And suddenly on the stage, you see your 3 family members twist from smoke and flour into being. And they're all standing there and they hold out their hands to you.
I stand and move closer to them.
Okay. Can you roll another wisdom saving throw with disadvantage?
Natural 1.
You go up, steps form out of the stage in front of you. They just ripple down out of the roots, and the hand is extended to you, and you very much want to take it. It is the hand of your sister, and she smiles and nods encouragingly at you.
I'll take it.
You feel a strange wrenching sensation as your sister's eyes glow pink, and the shade goes from a pleasant colour to a much more shocking, slightly bloodied fuchsia. And you feel your soul pulled from your body. And you see your body still standing as it moves back to the back row and sits down, and then joins the people laughing and joins the people applauding. But there's nothing you can do as your soul is clasped in what was once your sister, but now seems to be a strange entity that shifts. You can see a wooden mask of a face with pink eyes smiling before it elongates into the maw of a wolf. Lor'athel is lost to the theatre.
Sorry.
Who knew Lor'athel would lose his soul, huh?
I didn't think he would go into the
I think
Feywild.
that's a good point to finish this.
Yeah, I think that's quite a dramatic finish, so I thought that
Yeah.
worked quite well
That's fair
narratively.
enough.
So new
Um,
character, Simon? Or...
Yeah.
Well, you don't know where he's gone,
No,
so
Why?
it may have to be, unfortunately.
I don't know.
I didn't know he was going to go into the Feywild, so there's that. Okay, so we will stop it there for this evening with Lor'athel's soul drifting to join the theatre of the Feywild.
Well, fuck.
Yeah.
That's not what I wrote down.
No, that's not what I planned at all. Thank you very much for playing. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for listening. Everybody wants to say bye, say bye.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Ghost house.
Bye, folks.